Good evening. We will now return to open session. Before I ask for approval of the agenda, I'd like to make a statement. On behalf of the Board of Trustees, I would like to extend our heartfelt condolences to the Novato community for the loss of one of their students to suicide. Our thoughts are with you all. Before we begin tonight's meeting, I ask that we take a moment of silence to reflect on how we can support each other during experiences of loss and how we can move forward and personally assist the young people in our lives. Thank you. There are no reportable actions taken at closed session. Now I'd like to ask for someone to make a motion to approve the agenda, including time limits.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I see that we have on the agenda to review the norms, and so can we do that now? I think we were going to ask you, Cynthia, to do it this time, since you've had experience doing it in the other district.
Okay. And am I reading all of these, or just the board meeting norms?
No, just the board meeting norms. Thank you.
So the board meeting norms, we are starting a new procedure where we review them at the beginning of the meeting, and these are norms that the board expects to operate under, and then we'll quickly review them at the end of the meeting and picking one for what's called a glow that we did well, and one that perhaps we need to work on, a grow. The board will come prepared and fully present and engaged. The board will deliberate effectively, each listening openly, while everyone is encouraged to express their point of view and not interrupting. Work collaboratively and striving for consensus. Maintain perspective with a sense of humor. Not repeat each other or ourselves. Not have side conversations. Give full attention to the proceedings. No cell phone use. Focus on the best interest of all students. And committing to no surprises.
Thank you, Cynthia. So the next item is to ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda, but before doing that, I'd like to ask if there's any public comment on the consent agenda, and after I allow time for that, I'll ask if any of the board members wish to have anything removed from the consent agenda to be discussed later on in the meeting. But first, let me ask, are there any public comment on the consent agenda? Any student trustees wishing to comment? So now I'll open it up with if there's any issues or items on the consent agenda you'd like to have pulled because you'd like to discuss in open session.
I had asked that the adoption of the Life Earth curriculum be pulled for discussion.
Okay, let me make sure I get the right.
And I can't see the number.
I'm looking too here. I had it. Oh, here we go. It's number G. Okay, 13G. Is there anything else? Okay, with that, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item 13G, new course of study for the Living Earth.
So moved.
Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. That passed. Thank you. So now we move on to the student trustee reports, and I see we have a new student trustee that I think we need to first be introduced to before we move on from here. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? We're very happy to have you.
Hello. I'm Devonna Times. I'm from San Andreas High School, and I'm in the leadership class as well as the SOAR club.
Great. Thank you. So just so that you're not, I mean, this is your first meeting, and at the beginning of the meeting, at this time, we ask the student trustees to report out of anything that's going on in respect of high schools. And throughout the process during the evening, sometimes we'll ask you specifically if you have any concerns or thoughts about certain issues, and sometimes I'll ask for a preferential vote. So that's a time where you can vote as student trustees on a board action. And I already violated the no surprises because I didn't give you warning ahead of time that I was going to ask you to tell us about yourself. It just came to me. So full disclosure there. But it's very nice to meet you, and we're really excited that you're here. It's nice to have all the high schools represented. So with that, why don't we start with Lauren? So that way, that gives you time to decide if you want to share anything or not, because you'll kind of get the idea of the level of detail that people go into.
Okay, so Redwood has their winter rally tomorrow. There's going to be a food day next Friday. All 5 of Redwood's winter sports teams made it to the MCAL championships, which is really exciting. Only 2 of the teams won, boys soccer and wrestling, but all the other teams lost by only 1 point, or they went into penalty kicks or something. So they were really exciting games, and it was a really exciting winter season for sports. Our cafeteria has some new gluten-free food options, and they're still reordering the lines and stuff like that, so a lot of changes happening there. Course requests end tomorrow. There was a staff development day last Wednesday, and the staff looked at strategies for building relationships between teachers and students, and building those supportive relationships. Redwood's drama program entered in the Linnea Festival, and they won a gold prize for their play. Their submission was called The Blind. Several dozen students showed up to soccer games in the pouring rain to support their teams. And then there were 4 students from Redwood who were chosen as National Merit Scholar finalists from the PSAT. And so 1.6 million students take that test, and only about 15,000 are finalists. So that's about 1%. So that's really exciting for those students.
Thank you, Lauren.
Hi, so at TAM, 3 of our fall sports qualified for the NCS playoffs, which is exciting. That was both boys and girls soccer and boys basketball. Members from our leadership class and link class sent representatives to a countywide retreat this weekend with leaders from leadership and link crew classes across the county. So from Novato and San Marin, San Rafael, Terra Linda, TAM, and Redwood and Drake. Kids that I talked to who went had a lot of fun. We had a lecture from one of them today about how we need to be doing more, and there's so many other ideas that we have. So right now TAM is trying to create a student senate, and they got the bylaws from Terra Linda and from Novato that we're going to look at. So when we finalize our bylaws to go to Mr. Farr and to our student government, we're trying to figure out what works well at those other schools and incorporate them into ours. Our breakthrough day, the 52nd anniversary, is getting moved to sometime in March because it's such an important thing at TAM that they felt like SOAR and BSU thought that it wasn't fully prepared yet, so they want to give it some more time. And then it's a bummer that it won't be in Black History Month, but at the same time, there's no reason that we can't do it any other time in the year. So we're trying to make sure that it happens before spring break so it doesn't lead too much into AP testing, but we're still trying to make it happen this year. A lot of the freshman classes are reading The Hate U Give in core classes, which a lot of people don't realize it's kind of connected to TAM because it's based on a Tupac lyric, and he went to TAM for 3 months, so that's cool. And the person who adapted, I'm forgetting her name, but who adapted the book into a screenplay also went to TAM, so that's exciting. I wish I read that as a freshman. Our mock trial team won county for the 24th year in a row, so that's cool. They're going on to state. And counselors have been coming into classes for each grade and met with each student one-on-one about classes for next year to try and minimize schedule changes in the fall. So they came to all freshman and sophomore English classes, juniors and seniors in their history classes to talk one-on-one to just make sure we don't change everything in the fall. Our drama program just finished their improv show, and Trojan Woman will be going from March 12th to March 16th. And there's going to be a screening of I'm Not a Racist, Am I? At the Mill Valley Community Center on February 28th, which the school is encouraging students and staff and community members to go to and attend. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. Charlotte.
Okay, Hi, so Tamascal has been doing really good. One of the big items that just happened is team went to Angel Island for one of their trips. Yes, they had to go in the freezing cold and the rain, but they had a lot of fun. It was 3 days. They left on a Friday and got back Saturday morning. They had a lot of fun, and this was a preparation for one of their bigger trips where they're going to be gone for a whole week, camping through the woods, practicing their wilderness medicine, the whole 9 yards. So a big thing that's happening is Pathways and Team are both about to open applications for next year. Pathways is changing the incoming students from 24 to 48 because just so many students want to be in Pathways. The new teacher that's going into Pathways is a current Tamascal teacher, Patchen. He's really great. So I personally am really excited, as I'm an applicant, for this new opportunity for more kids to get into Pathways. Coming up is Suicide Prevention Week. It's going to train students in suicide and depression identification, show them resources they have available to them, and sort of tell them what to do if you, a friend, a family member, sort of anyone you love or you're close to is depressed or maybe is even about to commit suicide. It's a pretty deep training. It's going to happen in both advisory and an optional one that you can go in and get highly certified. So it's going to be great, and I'm looking forward to it. And then finally, something that happened is the elective surveys went out. So this year, sadly, 3 of our amazing teachers are retiring. But next year, there is an opportunity for there to be new electives because new teachers are coming in and they have a different skill set. So Kim decided to put out an elective survey to see what the students want to take. So we took the survey and we'll see what comes back. And I'm really excited. Thank you. Oh, our principal.
Okay, so recently we've had some changes to our leadership class, which is kind of turning into a half leadership, half SWOR class, where we're also going to be going into literature with books like The Hate U Give, analyzing them, and really looking how they affect our communities. And as well as SOAR joining leadership, we're also having another club during our ACE, which is called the Student Action Committee, which is like SOAR, but it goes beyond race and most boundaries. And then we just got new check-ins for students it's an online link for students to go to where they can write their names and say who they want to check in with and what they want to check in about. And it's really helping our students, come to school and really be proactive while they're there. And recently we just had 11 early graduates from our school, as well as in our peer resource class, we watched a movie about bullying, which was really about how our first reaction to bullying and a lot of things is empathy, and showing how much empathy is actually in our school and how we care for each other. And last but not least, we had a multicultural food day, which was on January 24th, where all students were encouraged to bring different dishes from their culture to join us together as one entire school. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very well done. Thank you. Maddie.
So not that much to report. Our wrestling team got second in MCALs behind. So pretty good. Some of our people won in their divisions, so that's exciting. We had a summer opportunities fair with 25 different organizations that had booths that kids could go talk to see lots of different opportunities they could do over the summer. So different organizations or study abroad programs or volunteer opportunities and things like that to try to get kids interested in what they want to do over the summer. And then finally also our Student Senate has different subcommittees, and our election subcommittees has been working for a long time to look at how we count votes in our election, because before we were on the Australian system, which is just whoever has the most votes wins. But last year we had 3 people running for leadership president, so then one person got the most votes, but they didn't get the majority. So then in order to prevent that from happening again, so that like whoever wins will hopefully represent at least over 50% of the school, or over 50% of the school will have wanted them to win, we're moving towards a ranked system. And so then first ASB approved it, and then Student Senate approved it. So that's what we're going to do. We amended our constitution. So we're going to have people rank each of the candidates so that if no one gets a majority, whoever had the least amount of votes, their votes will be redistributed based on people who voted for them as their top choice, who they voted for their second choice will be redistributed to them. And then hopefully that will happen until someone has a majority.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question of
Yes,
Devana?
absolutely.
Is it Devana? Yeah. You had talked about, you said there's a third group that you had, so it's leadership, SOAR, and then one that went beyond race. What was the name of that one?
The Student Action Committee.
Student Action Committee, okay. And then can you tell a little bit more about the check-in system?
Well, the check-in system, you do it by yourself on your phone. You go to a link that's on all teachers' whiteboards, and you basically enter your name, enter if you want to check in that day or if not. Also, who you want to check in with, you know, a teacher, maybe it's our counselor, Corey, or, you know, just any trusted advisor. Also, even a friend that you want to take time to check in with. And then also what you want to check in with them about. And it's just like a brief little thing saying, oh, I want to check in with them about this. And then you submit it, and it goes to, I believe, Corey, who then, you know, tells that kid, okay, you can go check in, or, you know, check in at ACE or at lunch or at break.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, very good. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you again. Why don't we move on now to the next item, the superintendent report? You can. Sorry about that.
Good evening, everyone. So February is a super busy month. Students are scheduling courses for next year, as we heard. The 3 comprehensive sites are also in the process of enrolling rising 9th grade students. So if we have families who are looking for information, all of the websites have enrollment information available. And the schools will begin the process of building the master schedules for next year in early March. And here at the DO, we're preparing for our second interim budget report, which will be presented on March 12th to the Board of Trustees. A few things of note. February 4th through the 8th was National School Counselor Week. So from the American School Counselor Association, they say, providing lessons for life was the theme. The week is celebrated to focus public attention on the unique contribution of school counselors within the United States school systems. National School Counseling Week, sponsored by ASCA, highlights the tremendous impact school counselors have in helping students achieve school success and plan for a career. As we know, our counselors do so much for our students and our community. They're often the adult to whom students turn in times of high need, the adult who often keeps students connected to and attending school. So we thank our counselors for all that they do for our students. So if you have a moment, thank a counselor. February is also Black History Month. It's a great opportunity to celebrate Black excellence and engage in deep learning. Yesterday we published the Ed Services Express, our educational services newsletter, and in it we provided various resources for staff and students that will be also available in our parent newsletter going out later this week. And as Pat Russo of Edutopia reminds us, it's important that teachers reinforce that Black history is American history. Also later this month, February 25th to March 1st is Say Something Week, which is a campaign that was started by the Sandy Hook Promise Foundation to raise awareness around gun safety and provide students with the tools to speak up if they hear someone is planning to hurt themselves or others. A key component is for students to identify a trusted adult on campus with whom they can confide. Research conducted by the United States Secret Service indicates that in 4 out of 5 school shootings, a perpetrator had told someone of the plans ahead of time. So it's important that we all be aware and say something when we hear or see something. So be looking on your school sites for some activities around Say Something Week. And as a reminder, not that anyone needs this. February 18th to the 22nd is midwinter break, and all schools will be closed for the week. The district office will be open from February 19th to the 21st. Thank you.
Okay, so now we're on to the one primary topic on the agenda, which is going to be a presentation and dialogue with the board, Tara Topier, to discuss budget reduction recommendations. Okay, yeah, that would probably be easier. So I did want to mention to the trustees and anyone in the audience, once this presentation is complete, there'll be a time for public comment. And then after that, the board will have any further discussion if we need to. But wanted to remind everyone, we're not taking any action tonight. And throughout the presentation, to allow more free dialogue, I encourage the board members, you don't have to ask if you can ask a question, ask questions. And then if you could just keep in mind if there's a question that you're asking that's a clarification versus a question that you think you really need to have the answer to in order to make a decision 2 weeks from now, please note that, and I'll be writing those down, as will Barbara, the clerk will be helping, and then we can revisit those and at the end and decide whether or not we need to have a special meeting or how we're going to deal with it from there. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. So with that, I'll turn it to you, Tara.
Can I just clarify? So
Yes.
the presentation includes the board's discussion of the
Yes.
recommendations before opening it up to public comment?
Yes, so that's true. So it'll be ongoing, and then at the end of it, we'll have some discussion. Then we'll do public comment, and then someone may say something that spurs one of us to ask a clarifying question or something of the superintendent. So that's how we'll do it.
Okay, thanks. Good evening, everybody. So as we know, here we are with the budget reduction recommendation. Or not. Thought I turned it on. It's on. Can you advance it, Mary?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So this is an overview of the agenda for the evening. So I'm going to start with some overview. Remind people of the budget context, where we were in June, thanks, and where we are now, and where we will be going. I'm just going to overview the fiscal advisory process and then present my recommendation for budget reductions. So an overview of the process in 2015. Again, this is just a reminder of where we were. That back in 2015-16 is when we started looking at some of the potential impact of enrollment growth and what recommendations we might need to make in light of that. We had a budget study committee, enrollment growth. As you can see, there were a series of committees and decisions that were made over those years leading up to this, and including this year and the fiscal advisory work of this year. And I'll be speaking a little more to some of the things that we specifically, like the $1.8 million in reductions that took place. Okay, thanks. So this is just the timeline. It's been in every presentation. This is just how we went about coming to today. So go forward, Mary. Thank you. One more. And just to show you that here we are on the 12th. And as to reiterate what Leslie said, tonight is for discussion only, and that no action will be taken. The action will be requested on the 26th. Okay, so cost reduction. So last spring, before we went in, as we were developing the budget for this current year, we went through a process of identifying reductions. And even though we had a goal of $3 million, came up with a reduction of $1.8 million. The important piece here is to note that that $1.8 million in reductions brought the deficit down to the $7.8 million. Okay, so when you see, this was the June 2018 budget adoption multi-year projection. Those were the numbers of where our ending fund balance would be and what we were projected to deficit spend in each of the years, this year and the 2 out years. And as you can see on this slide, if things had not changed, we would have been insolvent by the middle of 2021. Okay, so where we were in July, we just saw the budget adoption, so that's where we were. So we knew we had to take some action. Again, enrollment growth, that was no surprise. We knew it was coming. We're basic aid. We don't get any additional dollars for additional students. Those were the operating deficits and the reserves. As we know, reserves are our sort of bank account, our savings account, and that was being spent down. 2 ways to solve a budget problem. You either raise revenue or reduce costs or do a combination of both. We chose to do a combination of both. We're incredibly grateful to our community that Measure J passed, and that made our jobs a little easier, although not easy. So Measure J will provide $2.9 million in the current year and $5.1 million additional in the 3 subsequent years. I'm going to speak a little bit to the STRS and PERS rates that were reset in 2013 and the cumulative impact that has on our budget. So 2013, we had something called PEPRA, and both STRS and PERS rates were recalculated based on this Reform Act, and it restructured the retirement age and benefits. So if you look at the chart at the bottom, what you can see is starting in 2015, the increase in the rates. So essentially, the state said that we need to increase contributions to keep these retirement services solvent. And they divided it at 70, 30, 10. And the 70% obligation was assigned to the school districts and to the public agencies. So what you see there is in 2015, we have the rates, the employer rates, that's us, that we are contributing to PERS in the top and STRS in the bottom. And you can see that for PERS, we go from 11.8% contribution to 26.8% contribution in 23-24. And for STRS, we go from 10.73 to 20.1 in contributions. The cumulative impact on our budget annually by the end of this will be $6.7 million. So while we knew enrollment growth was coming way back, we didn't know this was coming. So this has been an additional cost that we've had to deal with. This is an obligation by the district. We do not have a choice in whether or not we pay this. This is a bill due that we are required to pay. So this is just another visual that shows you that the red line was the STRS and PERS costs back in 2013-14 and where it would have been had it stayed steady, and the blue lines indicate where it will be moving forward. So given the compilation of events that were happening in the district, that we had enrollment growth, that we are basic aid, and that STRS and PERS contributions and some other unfunded obligations were coming our way, we began making some reductions. So this is a list of reductions that were made to date. The blue was in 2016. The next 4 lines, which are shaded with green, were reductions that were made in the spring of 2018. So those are the 1.8, those are part of those $1.8 million in reductions that we identified last spring. Those are part of our adopted budget. The bottom rows that are highlighted in yellow are reductions that have been made since budget adoption in July. So those were identified in first interim, but they were not an adopted budget. So where we were in July is that top line. As you can see, 18-19 adopted budget, the projected deficit. So the changes that have been made since July have amounted to $4.1 million. Included in that is the $2.9 million in additional parcel tax we'll get this year, as well as the reductions that were listed on the previous slide and some other adjustments that were made. All of that brought us up to the 4.1, which reduced our deficit from 7.8 million down to 3.7 million. which is a huge improvement, but it's still a deficit. So this slide is indicating the operating deficits along with the ending fund balance. So the ending fund balance, we have a statutory requirement from the state that we keep at least a 3% reserve. So you can see that at adopted budget, our reserve was going to be about 6.5%. And given the changes that we've made over the year, we are now about 11.5%. Okay, so these are just some of the assumptions that go into the multi-year projection. So when people say, well, how do you build your budget? What numbers do you use? These are some of the assumptions. So our enrollment is estimated to continue to grow for another couple of years with a total of about an additional 242 students across the district. Our local property tax revenue growth is projected to decrease. So our property tax revenue is going to continue to grow, but the growth is going to decrease in 18-19 from 4.64 down to 4.1 in 2021. Our local revenue is expected to increase with the new supplemental parcel tax. It's not expected, it will increase, and those are the numbers there. The expenditure assumptions, the $3 million in ongoing expenditure reductions from the recommendation, and then which is built into our multi-year projection, as well as the reductions that we made in the fall, so those that were listed in the yellow. So this is our multi-year projection. The sort of orangish line is just to indicate where that $3 million in reduction is being held, and then the blue line shows our deficit spending. So if we zoom out from that, again, the top that's in white, that is where we were as of budget adoption in June. So those are the 3 years, those are the deficits, and again, where we were going to land with reserves. The bottom that's highlighted in the blue is where we are as of first interim. So we've decreased our deficit to $3.7 million in this year. We've decreased it to 1.1 next year and to 2.2 in the following year. And you can see where the reserves land. I want to reiterate that those numbers in the blue, shaded in blue at the bottom, include the recommended reductions from this recommendation. So this is sort of just key calendar dates. So I just wanted to iterate this is where we are. February, I'm making the presentation to the board. And the board resolution specifying the $3 million in reductions will be required by the Marin County Office of Ed after our February 26th meeting. We will bring second interim forward on March 12th. And as you can see, we will follow the normal timeline with budget adoption. So I just want to quickly talk about the Fiscal Advisory Committee process that we went through. Just want to be very clear that this was an advisory committee. You can go forward, Mary, thanks. This was an advisory committee. It was made up of broad stakeholder groups. Their task was to identify $3 million worth of budget reductions and make a recommendation to me. The recommendation that I am bringing forward is based on that recommendation that they made. So this was just the composition, that we had 13 members, representatives from a broad stakeholder group. One thing I do want to just pause here for a moment and really thank the people who participated on this committee. People have heard me say it several times, but this was not an easy task. This is not a task anyone wanted to undertake. This is not a task we take lightly. You know, nobody wishes to be making reductions. It's painful. And these representatives came to all of the meetings. We had 8 of them over the fall semester. They participated in very thoughtful dialogue. They considered many, many options. And they had really tough conversations and went through a difficult process and came up with a recommendation. So I truly thank them for their volunteer work on this committee and for lending their voice to this process. So thank you very much to those of you who participated. So just quickly, we had a decision-making process that was in place for the Fiscal Advisory Committee, and here it is. I think it's important to clarify what the purpose of the committee is, what problem they're trying to solve, and also when a committee will know when they have come up with a good solution. So that's the solution criteria, and that they vet possible solutions and then come up with a solution choice. So generally the process, we grounded this work in LCAP, or the committee grounded the work in our LCAP goals and our action steps. They prioritized action steps as related to our goals and our mission and vision. Reviewed quite a bit of stakeholder feedback. We did an LCAP and fiscal advisory survey. As I said, there's over 1,300 responses. The survey went out to students, staff, and parents across the across TAM district. We also had a Google form in which we took feedback in. We did presentations at each of the sites to the staff, and we also did 3 public community meetings where we also took feedback. And all of that feedback was shared with the committee. And they went through an iterative process of refining their recommendation. So I just wanted to, this was the question that was asked on the survey that went out, the LCAP and fiscal advisory survey. This was the question asking our constituency to look at budget priorities. Next slide, Mary. And this was the result of that question. I know it's a busy slide, but I just wanted to share the things that are highlighted. If you go across, that top row is priority number 1. So if you look at the highlights, the 60.8%, 10. So bright green is first, yellow is second, orange is third, and blue was the fourth sort of priority. So if you look across, you can see like what was priority 1, 2, and then at the bottom, if you see, you have total number of people who put an answer. So the bottom row is sort of a total. So the number of responses that were both 1 through 4. So that was part of the feedback that the Fiscal Advisory Committee took into consideration. And then they came up with this solution criteria. So this is what they used as how they will know if they have crafted a good recommendation. As we can see, it comes into alignment with the work of the district. And the comments at the bottom is that they wanted people to know sort of other things that they were taking into consideration when looking at this, when crafting this recommendation. So this is the recommendation that the Fiscal Advisory came up with and that Corbett and I shared publicly in January. We took this out, again, we went to all of the sites. We made presentations at for each of the staffs. Then we also did 3 community meetings. We went back and spent time at each individual site and let people come in and speak to us one-on-one. Corbett and I did. And then we took that feedback back to Fiscal Advisory. They went through one more round of iteration, and we had some thoughtful conversation. Can you go for it? And then based on their recommendation, this is the recommendation that I'm bringing forward to the board. So to spend some time on this, the net reduction in certificated staffing for staffing up to contractual ratios, much of that is part of the PARS, the early retirement incentive, but that is a reduction in teaching staff. With the elimination of community education evening classes, we have held meetings with College of Marin. One of the missions of College of Marin is lifelong learning and community education. So we are working closely with them to transition as many of our community education offerings over to them for administration. They will be meeting with many of our instructors, our community ed instructors, in the next week to look at ways of transitioning and consolidating so that services will be continued to be offered to our community, but through the community college where we think it's most appropriate. The reduction in certificated librarians, the desire to keep point 2 is that there are certain things that only certificated librarians can do, and that is, maintaining collections, approving collections, other things like that. And with that, there's two ways that a district can do that. You can either have some level of certificated librarian, or you can contract it out per ed code. And we decided to bring forward a recommendation that would keep a .2. Reduction to BACR. After working with Wes Cedros, the Senior Director of Student Services, who's done a tremendous amount of work around this, and I really thank him for all of his thoughtful time and number crunching and Excel spreadsheets. I think he's in the audience. But we put our heads together, and he did a lot of work, and we looked at ways of offsetting some of the reduction. We got a lot of feedback on BACR. This reduction is still a reduction to BACR. We plan to offset some of that cost with some TUPE grant money. We are also reducing the Director of Wellness position by 0.25. It's not actually a reduction, it's a share. We're going to share Jessica Colvin's position with MCOE, so she'll be working with MCOE 25% of the time. That savings will also offset the reduction to BACR. This iteration of this reduction allows us to keep our licensed therapists, which was a lot of the feedback we heard, is that particularly keeping licensed therapists was important to our community. In working with Wes, I also think there's ways that we can look to bring interns in from maybe other organizations like Apple Family Works or Huckleberry that might be able to backfill some of those intern spots to try to maintain as much services to students as we can. So that is a work in progress. And that was a real collaboration, so I appreciate everybody who gave input and thought to that process. And reduction to athletic budgets. There will be a 10% reduction to athletic budgets. We will have athletic trainers next year. They are going to be financially supported by our school foundations and athletic boosters. I'm incredibly touched by our foundations and boosters and parent communities. Most people in this position don't have that to lean on. Most people can't go to the boosters, the foundation, and say, hey, we're falling short. What can you give? Corbett and I met regularly with the heads of our foundation, and it was consistently, what can we do? How can we help? Let's collaborate, and all in the name of supporting students. So I am incredibly grateful to the foundations and the boosters for that, and for the fact that we will be able to maintain our athletic trainers for our student athletes. So I just want to reiterate that while that $3 million or $2.8 million on the previous slide is the process, part of the process that came out of fiscal advisory, that there were other areas that were reduced. And I think it's important to acknowledge that, there were other things that have been reduced, and I don't want that to get lost in the shuffle, that there's been other reductions that have been made, that the district has done a lot. We're trying to keep our promise on Measure J that we knew it wouldn't get us all the way there, that we were going to tighten our belts too and meet the community halfway. Mary, can you go for it? So again, I just want to reiterate the multi-year projections. So those operating deficits as of December 2018 include the recommendation of reducing by $3 million, and unfortunately still leaves us deficit spending. So any additional savings we might see from other efforts at this point will go to balancing the budget completely. I think I speak for a lot of people in saying we don't want to be back here. We don't want to be in a pattern where every year we're identifying cuts. We'd like to balance the budget and live within our means and really find ways to be efficient so that we don't have to come back here. So any additional savings we might realize between now and June will go to offset that ongoing structural deficit. So I've been getting this question a lot, like why are we making this reductions now? Can't we just spend down the reserves? And here's the short answer. We really can't, no. As you can see, 1.1 next year, 2.2 the following year. It continues to, it would grow in magnitude, and we would be out of reserves probably by the middle of 21, 22 if we don't make these reductions. It is not likely that Marin County Office of Ed would approve a budget that didn't have these reductions in it. And what happens if we go insolvent? Insolvent means that we can't pay our bills, we can't meet our financial obligations. And what happens at that point is districts are taken over by the County Office of Ed, and the district loses their decision-making powers. And the County Office of Ed job is to set the ship straight and to balance the budget. I think I speak for most people in this district, but we would rather make those decisions ourselves than have them made for us. So the next steps for after tonight is that on February 26th, the board will be asked to take action on a budget reduction recommendation, that the board action is on a resolution confirming budget reduction for fiscal solvency that we'll have to submit to the County Office of Ed with our second interim budget report, which will be presented on March 12th.
Thank you.
That's it.
So now I'll open it up, and I'll open it up for student trustees as well. But first, I'd like to ask my fellow trustees. I know I have a few questions, but I want to open it up to you first. Any clarifying questions or anything we want to discuss with each other about what we may need before we make any decisions?
Can I ask a clarifying question on the BACR funding?
Mm-hmm.
So initially, the recommendation had a recommendation of a cut of 50%.
Correct.
And then through application of the TUHSD funding and some, and then the sharing of the wellness position,
Yes.
you were able to take it down to 22%. Mm-hmm. And then you said that you hope to minimize the impact of that 22% reduction by working on bringing in some interns from some other organizations to backfill some of the reduction in services.
That's correct.
Okay. So the effect of the BACR funding may be less than 22%.
That's our hope.
Okay.
Oh,
And then I had another question on the library, because you said that we're keeping 0.2 FTE because there are certain things that only a librarian, certificated librarian can do. Can you let the audience know or let us know how the library will look differently by?
Sure.
Or if it, how,
Yeah, the libraries will remain open to students and staff, but clearly there won't be a certificated librarian always available to partner with a teacher to make lesson plans or make that available. But resources will be available to students and staff. The libraries will remain open 5 days a week. There will be, we have classified librarian aides who will operate the library. They will keep the libraries open. And then how the 0.2 works. I've talked to a couple of other districts, and the way they do it is the librarian spends 1 day a month at each site. It sort of works out a rotating schedule.
Great. Thank you.
Sure.
So I think I'll go next. I think I suggested this to you, but I hadn't quite crystallized how to approach it. I think what would help me is, like the rest of the board members, we've heard a lot from the community. We have our own concerns about our students' well-being. And sometimes the dollar value of cuts don't really equate to what the value or the impact of the service really is. And it can go either way. We could make a huge cut and it may not have a huge impact, and vice versa. And so I think what I would find really helpful is that, for instance, on here we just list BACR. And if I could see BACR in the context of the entire wellness program, and it could be in terms of value and cost, but for instance, I know we have academic counselors that work in coordination with BACR, and we have what you just described tonight with the suicide prevention and the training. And I know there's training that's starting with the teachers, as the first line. And and then we have a lot of resources that are voluntary, so they don't show up in the budget, but they do bring value. And so if I could see, whether it's a pie chart, some way to get a better sense of what magnitude this change in BCR has on the full program that we offer our students in the way of wellness. I know it can't be completely exact. It'll be somewhat qualitative. I'm not asking for exact right now, but I need to get a better sense, especially when I'm hearing from the community. Does that make sense to you?
Sure.
Do you know what I'm asking? And I had another thought and I forgot it, but I'm sure it'll come back. So I'll open it up again for anyone else.
I guess
Go ahead.
Just clarifying, in terms of the staffing, in terms of higher ratios there, that given the priority for having the robust course offerings, that's basically meaning slightly larger class sizes, but still maintaining all of the course offerings at this point.
Yeah, I mean, the idea is to, based on the courses that we're offering now, just with more students in them. Now, it might mean that classes that right now that are running small and are only singletons may not be offered, but by and large, yeah, it's based on our existing schedules.
And then secondly, I guess, as difficult as this is, unfortunately, looking at those deficits for the coming years, looking at other similar basic aid districts, if there are any that are more efficient than we are, is there anything that can be learned as we just think about the outlying years where there's still a deficit?
Yeah, we started that process of looking at some like districts that are similar in achievement as well as fundings, like Akalani's, which is not basic aid, but they're very similar to us demographically, size-wise. Looking at how they do staffing has been something we've looked at, and we'll continue to look at. And based on them not being basic aid, they are much more efficient, if you will, in their staffing all around. But there's also Los Gatos, Mountain View. There's a lot of other schools to look at that we are looking at for areas of deeper efficiency.
I remembered what I was going to ask. Along the same vein, I think it would help if there was any way you could provide a little more information about the value/impact of some of the reductions to date, in particular the teacher leader program, instructional coaching. Now I'm curious more about the academic side, knowing that also was number one in the priorities from what we heard from the community. That, by the way, is consistent with the poll that was done a year and a half ago and with the original budget committee. So I'd be interested in that as well, to get a better handle. And not to mention the impact of you having two positions, so many of these other items that you've listed. How does that compare?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, anecdotally, I can tell you that Ed Services in general has no one full-time. There's no one in the district that is right now full-time assigned to the teaching and learning aspect at that level. So teacher leaders, we haven't had a model to replace that one yet. We're in the process of working with TFT on that. Both Kim Stifler, the Senior Director of Curriculum and Instruction, and my former job, Assistant Sup of Ed Services, were split out with other positions and done it at sort of different times. We didn't know that was going to be the fallout at the time, meaning my position and Kim's. So, yeah, it's a struggle for us to maintain what we want to maintain, high level of consistency and impact on teaching and learning without having a system or a full-time person in place.
Yeah, it's very concerning.
I have a question regarding the custodial reduction.
Sure.
And what that will look like, if we know.
Meaning?
Well, if we cut 8 FTE, how, and maybe that's more information you need to get for us, but what will that look? Is that weekend custodians? Is that maintaining the grounds at a reduced?
So it's from both grounds and custodial, and it would be a reduction of from across the sites. And I think we're still working on what exactly that iteration would look like, but it's both from custodial and grounds. So there would be fewer people doing that work.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Yeah.
With the nutritional services and kitchen, is that just making the cafeterias just like simpler?
Yes, it's reducing the number of offerings and making the more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
As for the reduction in Tamascal staffing,
Mm-hmm.
what will that look for in like class sizes?
So there is a MOU signed between TFT and the district that would increase the contacts by 3 per teacher, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Including core teachers, like
Yeah.
the one-on-one?
Yeah.
Okay.
So their overall
Okay.
student contact. Right, so they have a student contact average that they can have across there. So if I'm a core teacher, an independent study teacher, my contact it's like 28 or, so it would go up to like 31.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So would it be possible, like I've heard rumors of there would be possibility of instead of one-on-one, it'd be the teacher with 2 students?
I think they're looking at, various ways of delivering instruction.
Okay.
Mhm.
So it's not impossible.
It's not impossible. I think it will matter on student schedule, staff schedule, what's the most efficient way to deliver that.
And I just want to second your thanks to the community and the foundation, or community, right, our community for the parcel tax, the foundation, boosters, and all of the groups that are helping do this, because it looks to me like we're looking at a total of, is it 5 million in cuts, 6 million in cuts that have been made, and it's not easy, and it's not optimal, and no one wishes that to be in this position to do it, but it's absolutely necessary for fiscal solvency of the district and to maintain the education as best we can that's become a hallmark of the TAM district. So I second your thanks to people who are making our job easier, if not easy.
I would like to follow that up by just thanking you and the LCAP committee. It's clear how much you care and how hard you guys have worked to keep the cuts as far away from the students as they say. It couldn't have been easy, so I just wanted to thank you for doing that work.
Thanks, Maddie. Yeah, Karen.
Or just as well, like I've been a student in BACR all 3 years that I've been at TAM, and that the fact that like you guys are trying to find ways to keep it around, it's kind of saved me from spiraling out. That I think that extra, 28% that we're keeping will keep programs that are vital, that are kind of keeping our students stable and helping us in the long run. So thank you for listening to all of the mean TAM students who.
Well, thanks for giving your feedback. Your voice matters.
Any other discussion or comments from the board or student trustees before I open it up to public comment?
Okay.
Thank you, Tara. So now is the time to open it up to public comment. And can I have I'm tempted to, can I have a show of hands of how many think they'll be making comment? I'm basically, so I might make it so that's 2 minutes rather than 3 minutes is the only reason why I'm asking. I think we can easily do 3 minutes then. Okay. So now's the time for public comment, and you're not required to fill one of these out. It's really just to help us sometimes with our meeting summaries and to make sure we get the spelling of your name right. But I am going to ask you to step to the podium and identify yourself and make your comment. Keep in mind that as a board at this time, we can't get into a dialogue with you. We may ask for a clarification to your comment, or we might ask if the superintendent could follow up, but it's not a time for us to get in a dialogue. But we do want to hear what your thoughts are. And then after we finish public comment, the board will reconvene again. And it might be, like I said earlier, one of you may say something that spurs something for us to follow up on in terms of a clarification or a question. So with that, I'll ask you, who would like to be the first public comment? Thank you. If you could step to the podium and identify yourself, please.
Hi, my name is Saran Yunel, and I'm from Tamalpais High School. I'm just here to ask, what are some other ways the district can raise more funds?
Is that your only public comment? So the question is how the district can raise more funds, and this is one of those situations, like we can't get into a dialogue, but if there's a two-sentence response, I'll let the superintendent take it. Otherwise, we will follow up with that.
Can I follow up with you in email?
Yeah.
All right.
So thank you. Thank you.
I can get it for you.
Okay, thank you. I do have one here, James Holmes. I almost want to honor that because you filled out a yellow card, which makes me think you are, would you like to come forward? Thank you.
Can I pass and perhaps comment later?
Absolutely.
It may be unnecessary.
That's absolutely fine. Thank you. So come on up. Thank you. And feel free to line up now if you'd like to. You don't have to wait for me to call on you.
Hi, guys. Good evening. My name is Greg Lockenauer. I work at San Andreas High School. I'm an 18-year employee of the district. I'm also the vice president of the CACA classified union here in the TAM district. I appreciate you asking the clarifying question around the humans that are going to be affected in the layoff. Just so we're clear, it's 9 custodians. It's 2 food service workers. It's a half a food service cook. It is a grounds worker. It is 3 program assistants from community ed. It's half a secretary from community ed. And it's 3 clerks. That's 20 humans that are going to be affected by the layoff. Not just the 20 humans that are going to lose work. That's the thousands of kids that we serve that are going to be affected by the loss of these people. It feels nice to walk up to a clean house. It feels nice to be educated in a clean room. It feels nice to know that there's an adult that you can rely on, that they're going to be there. This is the 3rd time I've gone through a layoff procedure in this district. And I would say this, the experience that I've had to this point so far has been a little disrespectful. In past layoffs, there was a little bit of heart involved in the discussion. There was a little bit more transparency. People knew what was coming their way. People were honest about what was happening. And speaking for the classified unit, that's not the way we're doing business right now. And with what's about to go down and the effects that it's going to have on people's livelihoods, on students' education, on the community use of the facilities, to have a little bit of heart at this point is going to go a long way. As a union, we supported Measure J. We supported Measure J knowing that you guys were going to put our people on a layoff list. Why? Because it's the right thing to do. Because for them, it's the right thing to do. For the people that step foot on our facilities, it's the right thing to do. Have a heart. Do the right thing. Put people in the position to work with us so we can make the best decisions for this community. We're a full community. Kids, people that walk their dogs, the people that drive miles and miles to come to this place because they want to work and serve these kids. It has to be different. Yes, I get it. It's hard. I've had to go through it multiple times. I've taken losses myself from this district. But I stand here in front of you and I ask you, work with us. Do the work with us. Don't have people sit across from the table that aren't willing to do their job. It doesn't help the students, it doesn't help the community, and it doesn't make us feel as humans like we're very respected. Right on the button. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good Good evening. My name is Cindy Hall, and I'm the Assistant Principal Secretary at Redwood High School and also part of the Executive Committee for the CSEA unit. I just want to talk a little bit, piggyback on what Greg said about the 20 people that are human beings that will lose their job in this proposal. But it's more than that. It's the jobs we lost in 2010. It's the jobs we lost when the print shop closed, and now it's these jobs. At the same time, you know, there's been increased in student enrollment. 70 teachers were hired because they needed to be hired to serve the students. And yet we keep losing more and more staff that support the teachers, that support the students. I really don't know how the work is going to get done. We've asked for our overtime sheets to now be sent to the district office. I'm curious if any of you have seen those, the amount of overtime that it takes us now to do our job. I don't know. My advice to our unit would be stop. Stop working overtime to get it done. That's the kind of people we are. We want to get it done. We want to serve the students, but it's not fair because there's no impact. The work keeps getting done, so you think you can keep cutting us. But when custodians aren't there, for example, we were down one custodian today at Redwood. We had a toilet backup and overflow. It was down for hours because there was one person troubleshooting everything. The clerks that we have help us in our testing and other areas. I don't know how, with the increased amount of kids that are taking AP testing and the state requirements for the CASB test, how one secretary is going to do that without the help of that 5-hour clerk. We are the most inexpensive labor that you have, and you're cutting us off at the knees. The food service people, they were down people, and we had our assistant superintendents and business people transporting food over to San Andreas because we were short. And yet now you're going to permanently cut 2 workers and a half a cook. Even with a reduction in the meals, I just want you to think about the impact that it has on students. Everyone says keep it away from the classroom. But if the buildings aren't there, if there aren't the clerical staff to all support the students, then it makes it more difficult for the teachers to teach and for the students to go to school and have the expectations of a clean bathroom. So anyways, think about the impact. We'll be negotiating that, the impact and who's going to do that work. Don't know how a library clerk is going to keep a library open by themselves. So those are the kind of things, the impact of those people not being there. I want you to really think about that and call us and ask us. We're happy to chat about it.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Margulies. I'm the CSEA Labor Relations Rep, and I sit at the bargaining table with the team. I just wanted to touch on some of the points that Greg and Cindy talked about. One of the things that we did as a bargaining team is we tried to partner with the district in this situation and try to identify ways that we could partner with you in saving money and being more efficient. But yet, I want to say, just off the top of my head, we offered up about 13 different suggestions on cost-saving steps that could be taken, things that we could temporarily set aside in our contract that would save money for the district, and you know, a variety of things that we put forward that we cost out, we thought about, we put a lot of time and effort into that because we approached it like a family. It's like, okay, we have to tighten the family budget. What can we do? How can we contribute? But yet every single one of those suggestions that we made was rejected. There was no consideration given to it. Just said, well, that's not enough, so that's not going to work. Well, that's not enough. But if you take all of those things and you add them together, they add up to a contribution to help towards eliminating your deficit problem. Not every situation is going to be a permanent situation, but all the dollars count. All of those dollars matter. And so I think that, you know, the frustration that you maybe hearing from our team is that we feel like we're being thoughtful in how we approach this. We're trying to think outside the box. We're trying to look at every stone that we can turn over in ways to partner with you, but we're just being told, no, that's not good enough. So I would ask that you consider how all of those things can add up and consider the contributions that classified staff have made over the years to address the deficit problem. And as they had said before, we went through layoffs, I think in 2006, we went through layoffs in 2010, and now we're going through layoffs again, and we still haven't been restored from the 2006 or the 2010 reductions that we experienced. But yet people keep trying to make sure that all the work gets done. They do their best. They stay after hours, despite my admonition for them not to stay after hours and work for free, but they do that because they are committed to this district and they're committed to the students and the community. And we just ask for the same reciprocity in approaching this in a thoughtful way rather than just determining that 21 people who have been dedicated employees to you over the years are expendable. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Would you like to come to the podium now?
James Holmes, Redwood, class of 71, incidentally. Like many community members, I cringe at some of the proposed cutbacks, especially as relates to staff. But I urge the board to adopt most of them anyway, with one reservation I'll mention. One key reason for the district's budget problems, it seems to me, is that over the years it has engaged in unsustainable mission creep. The intentions were good, but the financial results were not. To solve the district's budget problem, the district must revise the process of mission creep, reverse it, and focus relentlessly, even ruthlessly, on its primary mission, which is to academically educate the teenage residents of the district. The board should eliminate or reduce programs which, even though not frivolous, are nonetheless frills when viewed in light of the district's primary mission. My one reservation is that almost all the cuts seem to focus on the lower echelons, classified, librarians, and so forth, custodians, and not enough on administrators. I can't believe, and I suspect most of your constituents would have a hard time believing, that all the cuts must be made at the bottom rather than the top. Aside from this, I'd urge the board to implement most of the recommendations, regrettable though many may be. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Good evening. My name is Tom Borello. I'm a graduate of Redwood High School in 1967. I am an instructor for community education, and I am also a program assistant for community education. I started as an instructor in 2012, and I took the position of assistant programmer in 2016. What I find unusual about this process, and I do come from the private sector, I don't have a lot of experiences with schools, is that there are three kinds of communities at work here. You have the community of the kids and the teachers. We have the community at large, which is the folks who voted 98 days ago for Measure J. And then we have community education. There are really three separate entities. In fact, it puts us, community ed workers, kind of in an odd place. We're sort of the ugly duckling of the program. You'll notice on the cuts, there's no mention of any workers being cut, although obviously when they cut community education, they're going to cut the 3 workers. We're all part-time, and we work way harder than we get paid. We don't do it for the pay particularly. We do it in an effort to give back to the community. In my case, I owned camera stores, and the community supported me for almost 40 years. I was very successful, and I do it to give back to the community. What I find puzzling is that we talk about community forums, and yet only the teachers, students, and staff, parents, teachers, and staff were notified of those offerings. There were 2 independent journal articles, but as far as the district notifying people, they basically went to the parents of the students. The parents of the students don't have anything to do with community education, so certainly they would have no comment, nor would they have anything to do with custodians, so they wouldn't have any comment. My guess is if you look at the tiny UL input that was set up on the internet, you probably would see the comments were from the parents, specifically about the wellness and about the librarians would be my guess. But they wouldn't have any knowledge of community ed. And yet the community ed program is the only way that the district really gives back to the community of the older people. Of my age, I'm 70 years old, and we're losing that. And I'm sure you know it's a 48-year-old program. It's not a brand new program. So to get rid of a 48-year-old program that gives back to the community when only 98 days ago you received $5.1 million or 4 times for over $20 million seems a little strange. I hope that you're confident that the input that has come to you is significant to make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brief, it's not very long, but I'm a student journalist with the TAM News.
Can you give us your name, please?
I'm Lucas Rosevear.
Thank you.
I'm a student journalist with the TAM News, so transparency is something that I'm concerned with, predictably, I think. And I'm concerned with what I feel is a lack of transparency in this entire crisis. I'm a student journalist. I cover the events that happened in this district, and specifically at TAM. But if someone asked me what caused this crisis, I couldn't tell them. Enrollment growth is, I would think, easy to spot. It's what I've heard is that it was anticipated decades in advance, or not decades, but a decade in advance. I think the deficit was heard to have been anticipated in advance. I don't understand why this is treated as a crisis. I've heard that it's been predicted for years, and I've seen it treated like it's sudden. I've seen praise for our previous superintendent, and I've also seen the news stories that seem to imply something less nice about it. I don't understand exactly how the district ended up at this point, and I haven't gotten, I think, a decent explanation for how it did. There are a lot of students in this district, and this district is worth a lot of money. I think it's a public district. I think the community, the public, deserves to know exactly what landed the district in this mess. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kelly Gaffney, and I'm a Marin County resident. I'm also the regional rep for CSEA for this area. I work for College of Marin. I don't know if you guys know about AB 709 that just came down the pike. Well, with AB 709, it teaches us that kids that are coming into college are going to need to be more self-sustaining. They are getting rid of remedial math. They're getting rid of remedial English. Kids are going to be coming in at college level from now on. So with lack of support, such as food, camaraderie on the campus, I know when I was growing up, custodians, staff, they were our mentors, because there's always cliques in high school where people get into it, but the adults are the ones the kids can go to. So taking away the custodians, taking away the food staff, taking away the librarians, how are kids going to get help when they go to the library if the librarian's only there once a month? Who's going to help them with their reports? Parents work full-time. I work, my grandkids, I help out as much as I can, but who's going to be there to help them? You're going to take the librarians away one day a month? What if these kids got reports? Who's going to be there to help them? Who's going to be there to help the kids when, they make a spill? Who are they going to look around to find a custodian? Or is the spill going to sit there and somebody's going to get hurt? These are the things we have to put forward. We must have support for these kids, just as we do at the community college. It's very, very important. It's safety. Look at the suicides. You want to close the wellness center? You want to start splitting people? How many suicides have been in the paper in the last year? Just food for thought. Thank you.
I'm Derek again from UCSF. I'm really
Can you give
excited.
us your last name, please?
Derek Hirai.
Thank
Sorry.
you.
I'm just here to say again, I think that, 4 years ago the district chose, because of equity issues, that the athletic trainer contract with UCSF be transitioned to the district because of equity between all three schools. And while it sounds like the foundations and the booster clubs have stated that they can help provide and support that program, moving forward, I'm not sure for how long. Is that truly sustainable and equitable between all schools? Because I know that that is an issue, and that's what we worked on and what the board approved 3 or 4 years ago, to transition that to the district, to move that off the parent and the booster foundations. And I'm still concerned about the equity of this moving forward, that the pressure of providing safety to the student athletes. Tonight there are NCS games at Drake and at Redwood here for both boys and girls basketball. That the pressure for the foundations now is that they have to provide the funding and find that funding every year, year after year, for an extended amount of time. And is that truly their responsibility to oversee the safety of the student athletes here in the district? Okay.
Jennifer Tippett, parent of 2 graduated students and ex-booster parent. Just to further what was just said about the athletic program and the UCSF training program, it does seem like a huge extra, but keep in mind that we have over 2,800 athletic positions between the 3 schools. That represents a lot of kids. And I'm not sure if all of you are aware, there was a grand jury that came about with findings pretty much in the last year, I think. And there was a lot of concern about kids' safety in athletics. And at the level that we ask our kids to play these days, having a qualified person to manage their safety on an ongoing basis is really, really important. And I think that it's a responsibility that we have for our student athletes, once again representing over 40% of our students.
Thank you. Any other public comment on this agenda item? Is there anything you need to clarify with anything? Okay, before we move forward and have a discussion?
Yep.
Yeah, I just wanted her to have a chance to respond to anything, but
I was
think
going
we
to
can
ask some
open it.
clarifying questions of Tara after.
Yeah, we can do that
Should I do that now,
Yeah,
or-
we can do that now. Go
Okay.
ahead.
I think one of your slides, can you remind me, said that the district first started looking at the budget issues 2015? Okay, and those have regularly been on the agendas for board meetings, and so it's been a long term looking at it. And then, did you also say in this meeting that you had been working with College of Marin on the community education, shifting the community education opportunities?
Yeah, we're in conversation with College of Marin, Chris McCune, and Jonathan Eldridge, and Corbett and I met, and I think it's Hildebrand is the we've been working, and they're going to hold a meeting this week with community ed providers here in our district to talk about ways for community COM to pick up the administration of many of the classes and find opportunities to continue to provide that service.
And then I had a question which came up on the overtime sheets being sent to the district office. But then, so that's, people are submitting for overtime?
Yeah.
Okay.
But are they doing it working for free? Because I heard
No.
one person say they're working overtime for free, I thought.
No. Overtime is paid.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Okay, well,
Okay.
not good, but good.
Right.
I was concerned when I heard. And I also heard somebody comment about closing wellness centers. That's not true, correct?
No. There's the only reduction to wellness staffing is as far as, so just to clarify, BACR, we contract with that organization, and then wellness staffing is their staff members of TUHSD. So the only reduction to wellness staffing is to the director of wellness, and it is that's the 25% reduction services to the district that we'll be sharing with MCOE. So that is the only reduction to wellness staffing specifically.
Another question. Do I recall right that when we approved wellness in 2016, right, Barbara? Okay. There was discussion at that time during the approval of the wellness director, and I have a vague recollection that at that time, and maybe Wes will know the answer, the thinking was that the wellness director would really, the main role would be to get the 3 centers up and running, and then the actual role of the wellness director would shift somewhat, because so much of her time was building, and then it would be maintaining. So I guess where I'm going with this is that why you think we can reduce our time here to 75%?
Yeah, I mean, I think the centers are up and running. TAM is still very new, so she still has a lot of work to do there. But yes, it wouldn't, I mean, it's still going to stretch her, but I think having the 3 established wellness centers is going to provide her with a little bit of time. And some of the work she'll be doing at the county is related to that wellness-based work, just on a county level.
We seem to be taking turns. I'll let you go.
Yeah, no, and I just, you had said you were going to get back to the gentleman who asked about how do you raise revenue, and I just want to weigh in on that, if I may. And so we just asked the community to help us raise revenue through the parcel tax. And we are extraordinarily grateful to the community for voluntarily taxing itself in order to support the TAM district. And we don't take it lightly about thinking that we can go to the community, continuously to help us solve the budget issues, right? And that's why, and I think you referenced that we are, showing good faith to the community by making cuts that are not optimal, that no one wishes that we had to do, but that are necessary to get our expenditures in line with the revenue that we're getting from property taxes, from the parcel tax, from grants from the state. And so it's not a matter of just going out and raising revenue in order to continue funding the expenditures that we've had. So, and then we talked about at one of the community meetings that even if we, decide to try and raise revenue, there are a lot of revenue issues on the ballot. A lot of feeder schools, College of Marin, and a lot of other things that are also competing for the community's support. So that's why the board is taking this extraordinarily seriously on trying to reduce expenditures to line up with our current revenue and to reduce the deficit spending. So I just wanted to put that out there.
And I'd like to add one thing to that, along with the lines of the transparency issue. But I was one of the board members that observed the initial budget committee, and just for clarification for the new board members and anyone else that has the question, interestingly, the original budget committee was also comprised of stakeholders and staff and administrators, and came back with some recommendations. And when it was presented to the board, we had a choice to turn around and make cuts, right away, and which is often done when you really are in a crisis at that moment. We've all heard it with companies where, suddenly you turn around and you just make massive cuts without much thought, because you absolutely have no time. But it was a conscious decision that the district chose to utilize the reserves so we could make thoughtful cuts. You heard the term discussed a lot and referred to as thoughtful cuts, by doing analysis to keep it away from the students and to really do a full process by hearing from the community, since we are a public school. So as Tara was talking about, yes, it's now time. Now we've done the analysis and we absolutely have to do it. We could have done it 3 years ago. The cuts would have looked different. There may have been more cuts that were unfortunately could have hit the students harder. We would have had a bigger reserve back then, but we would have made the same cuts, magnitude of cuts. And I think, Tara, when you're referring to MCOE would take over if we went solvent, that's the approach it would be. It wouldn't be, it would be just across the board cuts. We wouldn't have this dialogue and input from the community and time to think. So I just kind of wanted to add to that. But the issue with transparency, I think that's something that I do appreciate hearing. I think we've learned that people don't want to get out of their after a long day, they don't want to come to a board meeting to find out what's going on. And I think the district, and I want to thank the superintendent, has really improved the notification and communication, two-way communication with the community, but maybe that's something we need to continue to look at as a district.
And then also for Lucas, I think you raised a question of how did it happen?
What did you say?
Can I one clarifying comment?
Oh, I thought she was saying something to me.
Sorry. Clarifying comment in terms of just how it is. I think it would be, this district isn't unique in terms of the challenges right now. If we look at some other districts, Mountain View, Los Altos, with similar enrollment growth right now, more affluent, arguably. Property taxes going up 6.5% a year there, so faster than 4.6% here in terms of the taxes. And that's really the key driver of the revenue for the district. They have a deficit this year as well. Their budget shows $2.6 million of cuts next year, and that's with a higher rate of property tax growth in that district. It's similar in terms of the enrollment growth. It's really challenged in terms of basic aid funding for districts here. Clearly, as enrollment goes up, the funding doesn't change, and that's the challenge to it. The good news is that basic aid districts have about several thousand more on a per student basis than other districts, so we should be thankful for that, but it does make it more challenging during times of rising enrollment.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you.
Would you like to comment?
Yes.
I'd like to add, and just to remind us that we have been working certainly at the state level with our legislators. We've been pushing very hard via CSBA particularly and other opportunities, and that's ongoing. I think our new governor has heard us and has offered some one-time solutions, but I think they are becoming much more aware, and we have to keep our focus on them because they're only here for 4 years or less. So that public approach to raising awareness about what our obligations are and unfunded mandates that we're also required to respond to. So I think that ongoing pressure on our legislators affects all of us and will improve at least whether or not we're going to have more revenues. I think we have to keep working on it and keep pushing that front because it's been effective.
Thank you. Yes. Oh, one moment.
So I was just wondering, I don't know if I missed it in the presentation, but I'm a little bit confused on, so after the public comment tonight, is there going to be a new recommendation that you guys are voting on next meeting, or are you guys voting on the same recommendation?
We're voting on the same recommendation, and this period is for us to discuss what we've heard tonight and determine if there's any further information we'd like from the superintendent just to help us be prepared for the next meeting to take a vote.
All right, but it's not like changing, there's not like a new proposal?
No,
okay.
No.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yes.
And just
I'm Devana?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I said it right. Thank you.
For further clarification, are the overtime pay for workers, is that by hours? And then so how many hours is that for overtime that they're actually paid? Oh, okay.
And let me technically say that we closed public comment, but
I won't comment, I just made a false statement and wanted to correct it, but they said that they would correct it regarding overtime.
okay, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Not overtime, it's comp, we don't get paid for it.
Okay, thank you. Comp time, not overtime. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I think I have some information that I'll bring back.
Do you need any clarification? You have it? Yeah, it's just kind of, it's kind of like a context. Yeah, it's context. Okay.
Can I just ask a question? So the proposed cuts are, I think it's 2.839. So we still need to identify another 160,000. Is that right, to come up with the $3 million of cuts for the resolution for the county?
I think that the 2.8 will suffice.
Okay.
Any other comments from board members? Yes.
I'm having a thought. The information I would like to have is to go to the dire part of this, and that is to understand what the scenario would look like if the county were to have to take over. Would that eliminate board functions?
Yeah.
Okay, and I think I'd like some information about how that scenario what that would look like. Please.
A clarifying question. You're asking if we were to go insolvent?
Yes.
You're asking me what that process looks like?
And how it affects a board or a decision-making in terms of governance.
We would be advisors. We'd
Right.
be consultants.
It eliminates your decision-making.
It eliminates.
Yeah.
It would be gone.
Yes.
It would all be gone.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Including. So if I can ask I can ask the audience to keep the noise down because it's distracting for the board up here to hear side conversations in the audience. Thank you.
So do you have that? I think you've hit upon it, but maybe a little more clarification that it. Okay. So I'll state that I think that what I've heard the board ask for additional information, I am comfortable hearing on the 26th, and I feel like I know that I'd be able to make a decision once hearing that information. I don't think I need an additional meeting to hash any of this out, but I want to open it up to other board members, because if you do, we can schedule a meeting between now and the 26th, an additional meeting. Okay. Do you agree with that we don't need one? Or
I don't see one.
Okay.
I don't see a need for one at this point.
Okay. And you're good with that, Kevin, also? Okay. Thank you. Okay, I think that concludes this agenda item, and we'll move on to the next agenda, which is the item we pulled from the consent calendar, which is item 13G, approved new courses study for the living earth. And Tara, maybe you can present. Well, that's why, I wasn't sure. I'm tempted to call him myself.
Can we wait till they're?
Yeah.
In the future, the norm should apply to the audience too. I should have asked that. But. Not cell phones, but. So you can ask them to take the conversation outside.
The agenda item that was pulled was the approval of the new courses study for the living earth. And So having a new board who wasn't here for our many presentations on next-gen science standards, I just wanted to give some context. The next generation science standards were adopted by the state several years ago now, and
excuse me, I'm getting some looks from trustees. I'm going to ask if the audience could please take conversations outside or just try and hold it down. Thank you. It's surprising how the sound generates up here. Go ahead.
In next generation science standards were new standards adopted by the state, and they're nationwide standards that really changed the scope and sequence, as well as what and how science is taught. And they included what they call cross-cutting concepts, as well as engineering practices. So they're really, in my opinion, very dynamic. And it's really about applying science now, not just learning science. And so when these standards came out, we developed a science task force, is what we called it. And that task force at the time had 2 representatives from each of the science departments across the district, as well as David Sondheim and Kim Stifler, and I think Sam. We had 3. We also had some administrative representatives who were former science teachers on that committee. The initial committee did what they called unpacking the standards to try to understand what the standards would mean, and came up with a recommendation for scope and sequence and what the course path would be. It was a very inclusive process. They got a lot of feedback from their departments. We held whole department meetings where they had opportunities to give feedback on the process. And we also held community meetings. We held them here, and we also held them at each of the sites to explain the standards, also to, similar to the process we went through around this budget reduction. We went out to the community, we said, hey, this is what we're thinking, what are your thoughts? And we had conversations, and they landed on what has been the most widely adopted scope and sequence, which is the 3 years, which is Physics in the Universe, which was rolled out this year, The Living Earth, and Chem in the Universe? Chem and Earth Systems. And so the idea is that there's, that 4th year is sort of embedded in those 3. So the Science Task Force, they took the process to that place, and then from that place, they stayed intact, but then we created a Physics in the Universe writing team that was made up of physical science teachers from across the district. The Science Task Force then became sort of an advisory body to the writing team. The writing team took a year to write both the course of study and the curriculum for Physics in the Universe, and then handed it off, and that was implemented this fall. And then we sunsetted the Physics in the Universe writing team and created the Living Earth team. So the Living Earth team has been working this year, following the same sort of structure that the writing team of Physics in the Universe did, and they have now completed their course of study, which you have here tonight, and they are simultaneously also writing the curriculum for all of the units. When we finish this year, Living Earth will be implemented in the fall, so next year we'll have 2 of our 3 courses implemented, and those 2 courses will then replace, and that will sunset our former science requirement of Integrated Science 1, 2, and 3, 4. What we like about this is those 2 courses are both UCD courses. So in our previous system, you had to take 2 years of science to get 1 year of the lab. In this new system, you'll get 2 years of lab in 2 years. And then next year, we will have our chem writing team who will go through the same process. It has worked well for us. Physics was our biggest lift. That's where we had the least expertise in the district, so that has been the biggest change for us. So I sort of think the transition will be a little smoother from here. So that was sort of the process that we've gone through in both transitioning to NGSS, developing the courses, and engaging our community. Yeah.
What would I have seen at Drake's open house in the science program? Would I have seen the physics?
Oh, sure, yeah. Mary Buchanan had a couple of demonstrations going on in her room, and talking about, I'm not going to know the names of them, but various units, yeah. I just want to say,
I mean, the level of rigor and engagement, and then student production was
yeah. I have to say the teachers have been amazing. They really embraced this process and the product. And I've been out there. I've been to a couple of the physics in the universe classes, and they're really excited. It's nice to see the teachers as excited to really engage in this work.
And just to reemphasize or follow up, so the departments and the department chairs or the leadership in each of the science departments made the decision that this approach to science best served our students. This curriculum best served our students.
Yeah, they took a long time. They took a long time to debate it, and they had a lot of hard conversations. So it was the science task force with feedback from their entire department and the community when they landed on this 3-course sequence, and they landed on also not offering honors in this 3-course sequence. That kids have a lot of opportunity to take other sciences, both honors and AP, in our district. And they felt for these core courses, it was important for students to be heterogeneously grouped.
Yes. Thank you.
I was just wondering, or I don't know if this is just more of a comment, but I've seen at TAM, like all the physics kids, or the freshman physics, not the senior physics, they're out like drawing stuff on the chalk with chalk and doing all these cool demonstrations. So it seems to be going well. Is the goal for the other 2 courses to be that interactive as well? Like, I don't know if that's just like TAM teachers who are like, let's go draw chalk all over campus of physics things.
Well, TAM teachers are awesome, but I think that the idea that you're seeing is that science is active. Mm-hmm. And that it's not a passive endeavor. Mm-hmm. And that, as I said, the transition to next gen is really about the application of science. So that's doing, right? Yeah. So they are out sort of, does this work? If I throw a ball, what is it? What's the arc? And so, yeah, so the idea is to be very lab driven.
All right, thank you.
I'd also like to say, at least just personally in my opinion, I found integrated science hard to remember concept to concept because it would go physics and then biology and just be all over. So it's hard to get that through line. So I'm sure it's nice for the freshmen to have just 1 year of physics and then biology, and then also having that through line of earth sciences to actually tie it together and have it be a bit more timeline wise. I feel like would be very helpful.
Yes.
I'm curious, how much lab credit do they get for taking all 3 years?
3 years.
Oh, so all 3. Yeah. More than they need.
Yes.
They get the credit that they deserve.
Yeah.
But what is recommended by UC?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
My question was, it's the same thing for the smaller schools, too?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so particularly at the smaller schools, particularly San Andreas, since it's mostly 11th and 12th grade, but there are 10th graders. But yes, the idea is that San Andreas will also be teaching all of these courses, and in fact, we're currently looking, and Tamascal too. So the idea that since we've gone from the 2 years to the 3 years, particularly for that junior year, is going to take a little work.
Good questions. Okay, I think we are ready to ask for a motion to approve item 13G.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Great, that passed. So now we're moving on to the trustee reports. This is a time we can share with each other any news, any activities over the last 2 weeks we want to share with the other trustees that we think is important for them to be aware of. So we'll start with you, Kevin, and just move on down. Either if you have anything to report, any news.
Barbara and I had an opportunity on Friday to meet with John Mattern, the music teacher here at Redwood, to understand his time with the school, the program he's running, really, understand, the success of his program and what he's trying to do relative to working within the limitations of the schedule that is, the student requirements and the academic courses they're trying to take. So it was enlightening.
Anything in particular you want to share that you think is good for the board to be aware of?
I still have to probably process
Can I ask a question? Because I thought we had talked about, were you invited? Was this, did I miss something? Was this a presentation by music or?
No, it was just stopping in, and we had a meeting. After our last board meeting, the band was playing. I heard them. I walked over and then sent a note to Tara, and I just asked her if we could have an opportunity to listen to his band and say hi to him in person.
Okay, because I'm getting a little concerned that like hearing the band and saying hi to someone in person is different than talking about curriculum with someone outside the purview of the board. And this is something that gets really tricky about board members. And it's why we talked about last time about, going through the process with Tara, because Tara is the curriculum person and we kind of supervise. So
I would say we didn't talk about the curriculum as much as we heard about what he's trying to do. It wasn't really the intention. It was more listening to his band and giving him the helpful support of coming to some of his upcoming events.
Okay. I would love to talk about this more in the future of kind of fleshing out because I'm very, very hesitant about how people see board members when they come, right? And it can veer quickly to, I think a teacher think they're advancing something about curriculum with one board member or two board members, and that's not the purview of the board. Right. So I would love to put this on the agenda for future item.
I think either on the agenda or during governance, because there's some subtlety that's there, and it was just so that we're all clear. The previous board, we were much more casual, and that led to some issues, and it's good for us. We're a new board now, and we need to think some of this through, and it's often just subtleties that can easily be refined, not getting rid of, but refined.
Kevin did. He reached out to me, and we did set it up through the protocol.
But thank you for that report.
Nothing to report now.
Okay, how about you, Cynthia?
Nothing.
Barbara, do you have anything to report?
Don't have enough to report.
You don't have enough? Okay, well, I'll report. So I did visit a classroom at TAM and thoroughly enjoyed it. And my takeaway to share with the board is that, I'm not an educator, but, just seeing the seriousness, the dedication. Students were giving a lot of presentations, and the students came dressed appropriately and shook everyone's hand and made eye contact, and the presentation skills I was very impressed with. So I enjoyed that. I got a flavor of the personality of the school, and I enjoyed that. And I look forward to the future with the board having actual visits that are, put together that we can all go to. I also met Lori Dubin with Be the Influence, and I went to the presentation, and I'm going to say the last name right, but the Shetts, they were the real life, I want to say characters, but I don't want to say it that way. They were the beautiful boy. So and
chefs.
Thank you, and that was very helpful for me, and as a board, when we hear more about substance abuse and alcohol and how it impacts the well-being of our students and family, and while this is a community issue, that just what sort of, and I thought back to a resolution that the board passed a few years ago where we knew we couldn't forbid alcohol being served off campus at sporting celebrations. The wording was we really encourage you not to serve alcohol at your end of your baseball party, that kind of thing. So I found it very helpful just to talk to her. There's a lot of things I didn't know in terms of some of the support she provides, and I encourage all you to get on her website. I think you'd find it very helpful. And I think she's working with the Shetts to come to Redwood and possibly the district in the fall, so that's good. I also met with Mimi Willard and Laura Effel with COST, and they have other meetings they've been going to that are that serve tonight that are the same time as now, so they haven't been able to attend. But they try and follow the district, and I mentioned this during the discussion on the budget, was that, you know, it's no news, but I want to, because I know Tara, you're aware, but I don't know if the other board members are aware. Their main concern is that we stop deficit spending, and would like to see us have more of a formal discussion of where we would like the reserves to be, and something that we've talked about. But they were very supportive of the district in our attempts, but just wanted to remind me that is something that they and also the organization will be watching. And it was good to meet with them. And then the next one, the board president report, this is something else we can talk about sometime during governance. I keep trying to remember why that's there. But I think it was started a few years ago. Barbara might remember. There was a time where, I wish I could remember what started it, but a couple board presidents before me started having this, and it was a time to say something general about the district. And it was, I'm getting that look from Cynthia. Why? Okay.
It was at it was around the two things. It was around a time where we were having a lot of public comment around lack of transparency and communication, and part of the president's report was to try to address some of that communication and be, you know, sort of more open about the work of the board, and to address some of the public comment that was coming up at the time.
Okay, I suggest we remove this from the next meeting, because I'd rather, yeah, now that you say it, it's mine. It was, and there was concern about civility, but yeah, that's my recommendation. Unless any of you have a problem, I just want to remove that the next meeting. I'd rather incorporate that into what we do. So we'll remove that, and now for the public comment on items not on the agenda. I don't see any, except there is a young gentleman. Is there anything? So if anyone would like to make a comment to the board on an item not on the agenda, that now's the time. No? Okay, then seeing that, our next board meeting is February 26th. Same time, same place. Thank you very much.
Oh, wait. I was going to review the norms.
Oh, gosh. I almost snuck out on that. I almost made it. Okay.
So I think the thing that we did well was committing to no surprises. I think this process has been incredibly transparent and involved the community. And kudos to the admin team, Tara and Corbett, for going around, and Lars as well, and really involving the community with the draft budget recommendation, and getting some feedback, and then making some additional tweaks to it, and reductions and shifting of funds to try and further reduce the impact on students. I think you listened to the community, and I think it has been incredibly transparent, though difficult. So I think we did well on the commit to no surprises. And then as far as the growing,
and we're talking about the board meeting tonight, right? Or
Yeah.
are you talking about, okay.
Right. But I mean, the board meeting was about the budget. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you think I was going to just talk about personal growth, or was maybe encouraging more that the audience, that all of us on the side conversations, because it gets really distracting, and if we're trying to focus up here. So.
Thank you with that. And with that, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much. And welcome, Devana. Thank you.